On this episode, we welcome back our friend, linguist Stu Jay Raj.
So if you like deep dives into the nuance and foibles of the Thai language, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 and had his first experience with topless European sunbathers on Koh Samet a few months after I got here.
Damn. No wonder you never left.
That might be it. I got to tell you though, for a prairie boy from a small town Canadian hick village, that was pretty eye opening for me.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 21 years ago, fell in love with Thai people pretending that they don't understand my Thai. I thought it was just so cute, them feigning ignorance and confusion, that I never left.
Yeah, that's it. It's one big grift on it.
All right. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, access to our Discord server, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about more confusion from the Thai government about a reopening date, the price our friend Benjamin paid for a fistful of newly legalized kratom leaves at the market, and a lawsuit brought by a Dutch foreigner to force the end of a tiered system whereby Thai public hospitals can charge foreigners higher prices. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Right on. Okay, well, on this episode, we welcome back our old friend, Mr. Stu Jay Raj, linguist, YouTube star, and all-around gentleman scholar. Now, beyond his cracking Thai fundamentals course, which has taught foreigners far and wide to speak, read, and write Thai, Stu is known for his almost fanatical devotion to not only helping people speak Thai, but helping them understand why Thai sounds the way it does. We also talk about a concept that I found really, really interesting, which is something called ne, and that's spelled Salae Ha Hib Na Nu My Ek O Ang. Its meaning is multifaceted, but it might help explain why many times foreigners will say something to a Thai person in what to us is very passable Thai, only to be met with blank stares. Turns out there's a very good explanation for why that happens, and Stu is here to cover it. So here is my cool conversation with our cool friend, Stu Jay Raj. All right, well, I'm psyched to be back here on the show with a guest who has been on the podcast before. I am, of course, talking about Mr. Stu Jay Raj. Stu, welcome back to the show, man.
ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ
It's a very understated greeting, Stu, for someone as noted as you are.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
So for those that don't know, Stu is a noted linguist, polyglot, multi-language speaker, educator, and video maker, video producer, and host who dives into all the nuances of Thai and other languages and how they relate to each other, twist around each other, contradict each other, and all that fun stuff, which is awesome. So it's always fun to sit down and talk with you, man. And how you been?
I've been well. COVID's been a barrel of monkeys for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like everyone else on the planet, learning how to sort of pivot and see how you can make things relevant in a lockdown world. But yeah, things are good.
That's great. Yeah, I think we're all just, head down, sticking with it and doing what we do best. But your content output on YouTube seems to have gone up recently, which is great. Your videos are always really interesting. And let me just start off by asking a bit about that. I know what you're doing now is you are sort of analyzing other videos where people speak Thai. and you're sort of looking at that video and how they speak from different angles. What was your thinking behind this new sort of series you're putting up?
Well, that's kind of part of the big picture. Anyone who's sort of seen these clips go out know that they're part of my new MindKraft program, which started a few years back. I was given the task of a 11-year-old kid. His mother said, "Look, Stu, anything you do, can you teach my son? From jazz piano to coding to network security, penetration testing to language." And so I worked with him, and over 18 months, he developed this skill set in Chinese, Thai, Norwegian, Spanish, deep like English for presentations, and then also taught him, how the voice works and language and sound, and to play around with it, and as well as jazz, teaching, training, trying to train perfect pitch, and then coding and data security, and putting all of that together. So the whole goal is, with this much data out there, we probably don't need teachers in the traditional sense anymore. We can be our own teachers. We just need the skills to be able to hear things, gather data, and self-correct. And so what I've been doing in the analysis, I think I've done John Cena's Chinese. I've done Robert DeNiro Thai, speaking in Meet the Parents. And I'm just about to do the UK ambassador. Did a presentation in Thai after only 1 month. It's a sterling job that he did it, but I'll be analyzing, because he's a fluent Chinese speaker, and showing, what sort of filters to look out for from our mother tongues, from other languages we speak, so that we can build up fluency and prosody, not necessarily perfect accents, but we want to sound natural in the language to reduce the foreignness and get natural experiences if we're using those languages with the native speakers of them.
Yeah, I forgot you're also a skilled musician and computer hacker. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of all the mediocre people, stop being so damn talented, man.
Yeah, it's all data and making meanings with sound.
Yeah, well, that's your speciality. And you once described to me how you sort of just see languages and see sounds as sort of colors and pictures that you can combine and take apart and put together, which is a great skill to have.
Yeah, and what I'm finding with MindKraft is that I'm not special. It can actually be taught, and there's people that are getting a whole new lease on language, on life, on the things that they're doing, and even like things like perfect pitch. I've got a little 16-month-old daughter as well. So I'm using her as a guinea pig as well, to see if she's going to develop perfect pitch like many others in our family. But I'm seeing that a lot of this stuff can actually be taught if it's sort of done carefully, or done in a way that people don't even realize it. It's all about the framework from early days.
Oh, that's one of the things that I've always really admired about how you approach these kind of things, is that you absolutely do not think that learning languages is anything special, and you think that anyone of any age can do it. You just have to approach it from the right angle. And like you said, you have to just break it down to its sort of smaller data points, and those are easier to digest, and then you put them all together. So I think that's a really refreshing take, because a lot of people, especially with a language like when you go from English to Thai, there's a lot of concepts that are new, like tones and things like this. But you are just like, hey man, it's just like learning any other thing. You just have to look at it from here and then go to the next lesson and the next lesson and build and build and build until you're there.
I just believe that, we as humans have an amazing capacity for languages. We're designed for language, or language over evolution has built itself into us. And there are some wild things that we can do with our brains, with the apparatus that we produce language with, that I can't explain fully, but I know how to tap into. Okay, right now in my psyche, if you go after this broadcast and check it, I'm pretty sure that's a G. How the hell do I know that's a G? And how can I actually get the muscles and everything to produce that frequency without even hearing it beforehand? There is some crazy stuff going on in the mind and the muscles that we just don't know. But if we set things up in a way, we can actually set it up so our body will produce the language. And so I accept there are X factors that I don't know, but I know how to set myself up to be able to exploit those things.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight on this episode was a concept that, I think you told me about it recently, the first time I'd ever heard it, and it's called. Now you're probably going to have to correct my pronunciation, but in Thai it's called "ne." Is that saying that right?
Okay, so there is a word in Thai, ne. It's spelled ho no sala mai ek ne. And you won't really hear it by itself. You'll hear it put ne, samning ne. So samning accent or put to speak ne. What ne literally means is if you said it in Thai, เพี้ยนจากมาตรฐาน. So not the standard, so or a little off center from what the standard should be. And it's used to describe usually, now if you say to most Thais in colloquial use, putna would be the way that people sort of on the outskirts or Ratpuri, Supan would speak standard Thai. But it basically means anybody who's trying to speak standard Thai, but you can smell that they've got upcountry on their accent.
I see. And that's the fascinating concept because obviously as you know, me with my giant bald head and pasty face busted into a room, I mean, it's obvious that I'm not going to be speaking fluent Thai. So, you know, maybe people won't even connect me with ne. But if you're talking to a Thai speaker or a very, very good Thai speaker who's not a native speaker, maybe on the phone or something, they'll still be able to detect a little bit of an accent. Oh, he's speaking with it's obviously a Farang. Or does it also apply to, like, say, a Burmese person speaking Thai? Or
so okay, you've got different grades of speaking crap Thai.
Okay, now you're getting into my territory.
So the worst grade is put geng mak. So that means you speak really well. That means that you're on the bottom rung.
Okay. I get that one.
Sorry, I take it back. The worst grade is when you go to speak to them and they'll speak back to you in English. Okay, so that's there. And then the next one is put geng mak. And you've probably said something like Sawasdee krap or Khop Kun krap, and you know, you've received that. Now the next levels up are when, okay, you probably should be speaking better than this then. And that goes for long-term people who have been here. But especially it kicks into the Luk Krung. So the mixed blood Thais. You've got ones who are born here. Heritage Thais. So say people in my MindKraft program, I've got a couple from the US who are born in the US but of Thai blood and spoke Thai growing up in the family. And so they're basically doing MindKraft so they can sound more natural Thai and lose their nerness. And then you get people who are native speakers of Thai, grown up in Thailand, but they're from not in central Bangkok. And so when they come in, you can actually smell these degrees of nerness on their Thai. As far as the Burmese would be concerned, and sometimes with the Luk Krung, you might hear the word put mai chat, just not speaking clearly. Put pian. The word pian means sort of not correct, not straight with the standard. Pian. You can also use the word pian for somebody who's just a bit like weird, kinky, out there, strange. You would call them pian also. So pian is sort of not straight. Not straight in the actual straight sense, not sexual preference sense. And so, yeah, the Burmese, if they spoke super good Thai, but you could still hear it on them, maybe that would be no. But otherwise, it would be put mai chat, because the common thing that you'll notice with Burmese people, they have this hyperglottalization, or they all start to glottalize things too early. So, you know, if I say, I want a drink of water, and what you think you're doing, you can hear my voice is cutting off like that, isn't it? The glottis is closing and stopping the air off. And this is a real problem with people with glottal stops coming in to speak Thai, because what happens in Thai, you have these glottal stops. That's why you can't say things like check bill check bin, the glottis closes right as the tongue or whatever's in the mouth hits. So if I say the word mark with a K at the end, my glottis closes right where the K is. If I say mat with a da at the end, my glottis closes right where my tongue hits the palate. But what Burmese people will do, and actually what many Brits will do, is they will say ma, and their tongue doesn't actually hit the part in the mouth that it's supposed to because the glottis is cutting it off. So that would be called put me chat. And there's actually a joke in a Thai movie many years ago. So to say I couldn't think of it, you would say kit me off. The word kit means to think. It's not kit. It's kit caught right there as the tongue hits the palate. And so what Burmese people would do is glottalize before the tongue hits. So it sounds like keep me off. So kit actually sounds like ki, which means crap. So
poop,
keep me off means that I can't do a poo, as opposed to kit me off, I can't think of it. And so they were joking because the Burmese person saying, oh, I can't think of it, but actually it sounded like keep me off, I can't push the poop out.
Now, is the subjective? Like, if you went to, or let's not use you because obviously you're you're a very good speaker. But if like a Thai speaker from Bangkok went to Lampang or Surat Thani or something like that, and they spoke their Thai, their native speaker of Thai, and they spoke Thai to a local in that location, would the person in Lampang or Surat Thani say, "Oh, like put the"?
Yeah, maybe and different places in Thailand have different words. So I know in the south, if you go down there as a non-southerner and try and speak southern dialect, they will call it tong dang. So copper, you speak copper. Maybe that's to do with the copper mines before. I don't know, I have to look up at where that came from. But if you speak tong dang, that means you're speaking like the Ner version of southern Thai.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so there it's, and I guess identities are inextricable things from the way that we speak. But in Thailand, say you go to China, there are just so many provinces and people from all over the place that you've got so many varieties of Mandarin. And so when people actually go to be newsreaders or whatever, they will have to knock it into place. Thai as well, but it's almost from childhood, you just know that you probably should be speaking Central Thai in non-local situations.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and there are stigmas attached to speaking local dialects, especially in Bangkok in public, which is sad. But I've seen it where people have sort of tried to shy away if they've picked up the phone or whatever, and they'll just speak Central Thai if they're on the BTS or something. And then they'll wait until they're with their own people to actually go full ball in the local dialect, as opposed to Lao. In Lao, it's really cool because most places in Lao, people will take their local pronunciation wherever they go, and they'll just speak it. So you get somebody from Luang Prabang going to Vientiane, and they'll just speak Luang Prabang Lao. I guess it's like somebody going and talking like that. Wherever they're going, you're not going to change that just because you go overseas. But in Thai, they do.
Right. If you're from Texas, you're not going to go to Los Angeles and suddenly talk like this. Like, totally cool. You're going to have the Texas drawl.
Yeah, and it's crazy, isn't it? Too? Could you imagine, like, if you go and want some coffee, and people think, "What are you doing?" And I guess this is another thing too with learners of Thai. Because people are saying, oh, no, it's people just refuse to speak Thai back to me. If there is incongruence, so that means like if you sort of get some bits of it sounding in these natural rhythms, but there's something off, there's something no, well, then the whole package will be no off and you won't get it. So, if you're learning a language, whether it's Thai or something else, a good goal is to how can you actually have a whole package to start to at least have the rhythms of the language feeling normal? One
of the concepts that we chatted about previously before we were recording, I thought this was really fascinating. And this is another example of where a foreigner might be in a situation where they get frustrated and they think like, why doesn't Thailand work like just logically? Or why don't Thai people just do this? Because it makes so much more sense. But then when you think about it, it turns out that the farang is usually the ass in that situation. It happens to me all the time. And that is this one is when you say something to a Thai person in Thai, in very passable Thai. My Thai is okay for certain topics. It's not great, but I can have conversations. So there are times when I would say something in Thai, and the Thai person just wouldn't understand, and they would just not get it, and then it's some sort of like miscommunication. But you told me that as an English speaker, so many people around the world speak English that we are used to someone asking us a question in English with a Chinese accent or a European accent or an African accent or something like that. But not everyone in the world speaks Thai, and therefore Thai people don't have that experience where they've had exposure to different people from different places in the world with different accents speaking Thai. So they don't have that wide, broad experience with hearing Thai spoken back to them with vastly different accents. And I thought that was like, it kind of clicked for me. I'm like, oh, of course. Yes, that does make sense.
Especially outside of Bangkok. And I think in the Robert De Niro clip that I did, surprisingly, like whoever was the voice coach in that clip, in that movie for De Niro, obviously he didn't learn Thai for it, but they wanted to at least make him sound passable, that maybe he was this spy that spoke Thai and his family didn't even know.
Right.
And so I think they achieved that, but there were some things in it where possibly maybe the subconscious feeling of what Asians sound like, he was superimposing that over his language. And so there were bits in there, and I was doing a proper analysis. I broke out the spectrograph and was looking at the tones and the way his throat was operating to analyze what was going on there. And I think I was listening too hard. There was one sentence in particular, I couldn't for the life of me understand what he was saying. And then I posted it, and two commenters came in afterwards and thought, look, they've listened to it, they've gone back and put their ears back, and it turns out, and when I went back and listened to it with fresh ears, of course, like he said, I think the actual sentence was, they asked how many people, because he was booking a hotel. So,กี่ท่าน how many people? And he said, ลูกสาวและสามีเธอ so my daughter and her husband. But he said something like, ลูกสาวและสามีเธอ ลูกสาวและสามีเธอ. Now, to any non-native Thai speaker, come on, that's close enough. But honestly, I couldn't for the life of me, either could so many other people in the comments and who were discussing it. People were just sort of like, what on earth is he saying? When you realize it, you think, well, okay, I can see that. And he probably thought that, yeah, it sounds pretty close. But to Thai speakers, it's like speaking an entirely different language.
Just completely garbled.
Yeah, and especially in Thai. Vowel lengths, they need to be differentiated. Short vowels, long vowels. Glottalization is a huge thing. He said สำหรับลูกสาว, right? So สำหรับ means for. But what happens with foreigners that don't do this glottalization, so especially Americans? So สำหรับ, your glottis is supposed to close, but he said สำหรับลูกสาว, สำหรับลูกสาว. The P carried on. Yeah. In French, we call it the liaison, where what did you want? The word endings merge into the beginnings of the next word. So he said สำหรับลูกสาว. And it sounded like สำหรับปรึกษา I'm thinking, what's he talking about? Consultation, because the word ปรึกษา means to consult. And then my mind was going on a whole other tangent, because it would be สำหรับลูกสาว. There would be a break there in the Thai throat. So to a foreigner, that's just a non-issue, whether something's glottalized at the end or not. But to a Thai, you're thinking of entirely different vocab.
Yeah, I think that's a real blind spot for a lot of foreigners too, because there's those subtle differences between how people hear, which you don't really think about. You just sort of expect, like, I'm speaking okay enough, that should be it, but it's not it. It's a two-way thing, right? Like, speaking is only half the equation. It's listening that make the completes the circuit.
Totally. It's the rhythms, it's everything. But so I mentioned in one of them too, when I when I'm doing these, if you want to get them to speak back to you normally in Thai, rather than just saying what you think you want to say, spend 1-2 days just shutting up and doing reconnaissance. Sit in McDonald's, take a seat close to where people are ordering, and just listen how people are ordering, and then observe, what they're doing. I don't know if it's legal to record, but just observe and then go in and mimic that. If you get no reaction or no shock or surprise, you know that is the best compliment you could ever receive.
Right.
So if they just
right.
respond to you naturally, then you've done something right.
It's like being a special effects artist for movies. If no one notices, you've done your job.
Totally.
So is there, I mean, in Thai means this concept we've been talking about. Is there a similar or parallel concept in linguistics for other languages?
Good question. We'd have to ask Ricker when they, when I'm just thinking across language or linguistic, like you'd just be speaking the non-standard forms. But like saying languages like English, what's standard? You've got RP, but how many people actually speak RP English?
What is RP?
RP, received pronunciation. So that's like the old traditional BBC before they actually started going off. I think they call it estuary now, which is more of a more common dialect of English. But RP, received pronunciation. But I'm sure it's a small percentage of the population that actually speaks RP English from the UK.
Right.
In Australia, it's amazing that we have such a huge country, but there's not that big a span of dialects. Dialects are mainly socio-economical rather than geographical dialects.
Yeah. Canada's very strange. I think from sort of the West Coast almost to Quebec, it's roughly the same accent. Then in Quebec is French. And then you have Ontario, which is roughly the same as the rest of Western Canada. But then you get out into the Maritimes, and everyone speaking out there, they sound like Brad Pitt from Snatch. There's a heavy Celtic Irish lilt to their conversation, to the point where, years and years ago, back when I was in film school, we did a video out there, and we had to put subtitles on the video.
No, I remember when I was a kid, we had a family friend. He was in Newfoundland, and I thought his accent was the wildest thing I'd ever heard. I didn't realize that he was a native speaker of English.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it's funny because what I said about hearing is the other half of the circuit. I think a really good way for amateurs like myself and other people who are familiar with Thai but not fluent is to do exactly what you're doing. Now, you're doing it from like a sort of with these, like analyzing these videos. This is more of a scholarly pursuit. Like you're actively seeking them out and analyzing them. But I think it's a really interesting thing. And the first time this happened to me was just recently. And there's a show called Mythic Quest on Apple TV, which is really, really funny and really well done. One of the characters, Ashley Birch, that's the actress's name, she is half Thai, although she doesn't look it. And that was a very small plot point in a recent episode. And one of the characters said a couple of sentences in Thai. And dude, it was awful. Like, even for me. So that was my sort of like baby Stu Jay Raj moment, whereas you're doing it on a much more broad level and much more detailed analysis. It's funny when you watch movies like that Robert DeNiro one, Jack, or this Mythic Quest show. That's a really good sort of toe in the water for what you're doing on a professional level.
Well, since we're talking about this, and because I totally believe that if you can tune your ears into it and you can hear it, then you can actually then start to repeat it. So once you know how to articulate something, in like, okay, so this is that then, well, then you can learn to actually put it back in your own muscles. But funny you should say that, because I just did an analysis yesterday on Cookie Monster's English. And it wasn't a joke. Like, okay, it comes off a bit tongue-in-cheek, but there are some deep, deep things going on in his English and the origins of why he speaks like that. For example, do you remember the Thunderbirds?
The old puppet TV show from the 1970s? Yeah.
And so the villain was this guy called the Hood.
He was somebody who talked like this because the evil Japanese, yellow, or Chinese Cold War, they're talking like this, and that's the villain. This is this broken English that's
That
using Western perceptions of what broken English from Chinese or Japanese would sound like. And then you have Get Smart. Crawl, not crawl, crawl. Oh, the crawl. And again, he's like,
oh
this is Cold War sort of Chinese stuff. And then, so I actually did an analysis on Cookie Monster against these things. And you can actually see that the English of, because, okay, I said it tongue in cheek, that is Cookie Monster really a non native English speaker, or is he just putting it on to get the gig with Sesame Street?
yeah, that's a high profile gig, you know.
Yeah, but actually, if you have a look, this whole 60s, because Sesame Street's from 69, you can see the Thunderbirds is like 1965, Get Smart was all around that period, and they all had this sort of exotic Asian villain accent, which you see coming in Cookie Monster. And
Really?
there's some interesting things about the perceptions of how a language should sound. And that actually starts to color, even to today, the perceptions. And Robert DeNiro did it again. What he thought Asian languages sound like was then the filter that went over his actual production of the language. And you can totally hear that coming out across his language when he was trying to speak Thai.
Oh, interesting. So the onset dialect coach must have sort of coached him through it, and then that went through his filter of his life experiences with like, this is what Asians are supposed to sound like.
Yeah, and that's the key word. What his subconscious thinking of what they were supposed to sound like. So and it's not actually maybe what they do sound like, but even if you ask people, well, what's a Thai accent like for people who haven't lived in Thailand, maybe they'll put on their impression of a Chinese accent because that's all Asian.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. I've come across a lot of people like that who just, you know, back home in my redneck hometown, a lot of people, when I told them I was coming to Thailand, they would say, when are you going to China? And I would say, I'm actually going to Thailand. And they'd be like, it's all the same, you know, a really sort of limited worldview. But it works the same for languages too, because I still sometimes get emails from people asking if do you speak Taiwanese yet? How good is your Taiwanese? You know?
It was fascinating this morning. It's been a long day, 6 a.m., because we have a lot of people coming in from the US to MindKraft. But we actually all sat there and we analyzed the UK ambassador's Thai. He did a presentation yesterday. He's only been learning Thai for a year, but he's a long-term Chinese speaker, so he knows tonal languages. It was fascinating to see this British guy, and you could hear some British things from his English on the Thai, but there was so much influence from Chinese coming over on top of the Thai. And
Really?
maybe it's this sort of second tonal Asian syndrome that comes because he's already spoke and he's gone through the things with Chinese. Those things were then applied to Thai that you can hear as clear as a bell. If you speak Chinese and you're listening to the Thai, you know exactly where things are coming from. It was actually really fascinating. So everyone sort of sat and listened to it and broke it down and saw what was going on in his throat and the vocab and stuff. So then they could then, in turn, fix those same issues that are happening in them.
So would a Thai speaker listening to him speak Thai, would they be able to or be interested in sort of applying a label to him of like "ne jin" or "ne"?
They wouldn't use the word "ne" with him. They would just probably say like "mai chat." It's not clear.
I see.
He wouldn't be to the "ne" bit at the moment, just because some things were just totally out. The one thing in Chinese is Mandarin, we don't have the distinction between long and short vowels. And you'll find that with a lot of Chinese speakers, then they will pronounce Thai words with the same vowel length, whether it's long or short. So, yak gin khao, they may say yak gin khao.
Okay.
Yeah, another thing with Chinese speakers, they'll say things like hua hin. We say hua hin, but because they have this HUA, it's stuck in their head as hua, so they'll say hua hin. And so you can hear this whole bunch of Chinese stuff over them. Now, when a Thai listens to, say, somebody like that speak, they'll know it sounds off, but they won't know what's off.
especially if they don't speak Chinese. If you speak Chinese and Thai, you can see, okay, I know exactly where that's come from.
Right.
And it's funny enough, Thais have their own stereotypical version of what they think Chinese people sound like speaking Thai.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Tamailai. So D's turn to Law Ling, turn to L's. And all but it's actually quite different from what the Westerners would say Chinese speak English. There are different sound shifts that Thais actually pick up on. And it becomes this generic, I guess, even racist, stereotypical way that they take the mickey out of Chinese people speaking Thai.
Oh, wow. Now, this leads me on to sort of a tangent I want to ask that just popped into my head. You mentioned the difference between long vowels and short vowels. How do Thais speak Thai quickly while still maintaining the sound of a long vowel? Like in cow. But if you were to say that very quickly, in cow, like it's how do they reconcile that?
It's all relative. So, but okay. One piece of advice I'd give you, and it's so relieving. Have you ever come off a plane or come onto a plane from, say, being in Hong Kong for a week, and you get onto a Thai Airways flight, and listening to the Thai voice is just so relaxing after hearing Cantonese all week. Cantonese has long and short, but it's all relative. So I'll speak Thai fast. ถ้าสมมติว่ากำลังจะพูดภาษาไทยก็ถ้าเป็นสระยาวยาวก็ยาวสั้นก็สั้น So I was speaking relatively fast there. Short vowels will be always short, but basically you get permission in Thai to stretch the crap out of long vowels.
Okay.
Even when you're speaking fast.
Interesting. Wow, man, there's always much more to learn, isn't there?
Yeah, because if you don't, then they become short and it becomes a totally different word.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, man, I mean, God, I always say this when we talk, but every time we talk, it's like you're one of those guys that just inspires me. Like, I got to get on this again. I got to get on it. But you know, it's ongoing.
Do it, MindKraft, baby. Actually, the Discord server. I originally started off this Discord server because I just wanted a tool to communicate with the people in the course. And sadly, one of the polyglots, most famous polyglots from around the world, Moses McCormick, which we've known he was like family in the polyglot community. He died several months back. Okay. And so we put this joint piece together in tribute to Moses. And the guy that was running it, Benny, the Irish polyglot,
I've met him.
He coordinated everything on Discord. And I thought, this is cool. And so I started using Discord server just to communicate with my people. But I thought, oh, crap, this is awesome. So now we've got this server where over 350 people coming in. Now we've got channels for every language you can imagine, and even things like mentalism and magic. We've got books. We've got we'll be going to hypnosis, computers, IT, Linux, everything from data scraping and stuff like that. But the cool thing is that you can just jump in and out of conversations. When your brain's getting fried on one topic, you can give it a breather on another topic. And so this has actually become part of the whole MindKraft experience too, where if you're getting lethargic on somewhere, just jump in somewhere else. And we've got people like MIT doctors in tech, but wanting to improve language. We've got doctors in linguistics wanting to improve in other areas, or that already speak this, want to learn Russian now. And it's just an amazing, amazing group of people. The most amazing thing is that, touch wood, so far we have no trolls. And if we did, we'd probably be kicked out. But everyone's just so supportive and people wanting to learn. So, that's our Discord server. Jump in.
Now, as we're wrapping up here, I want you to talk more about MindKraft. Like, it's not Minecraft, the video game. It's MindKraft.
It's MindKraft. And let me just say, there is a video out there from, I think, 2005, where I had already used the term MindKraft when I was looking at putting a program like this together way back then. So before the actual game MindKraft was a hit. But I thought, why not jump in? And it's already a familiar sound in people's ears.
Yeah. So how does it run? How does it work? And what are you doing with it?
Okay. So the way I did it, originally with Verso International School,
They have an awesome philosophy where they believe that it's impossible to have a teacher to teach a student everything. So what they do is that students should learn from people who are the best at what they do, and it's the teacher's job to coordinate that knowledge. And so we started running this with the Verso kids, originally 20 weeks. Because of the term, we knocked it to 11 weeks. And then COVID came and a lot of it had to go on online. So we have 11 modules that cover the ground of so many different languages and languages in general, how the body produces language. We cover like Chinese, Thai, Indonesian, and we even look then at, even if you've never learnt them before, jumping between dialects. And so you'll get a grounding in Malay and Indonesian and then be able to, okay, now let's do a Malay dialect. Let's do a Malay accent. Let's do an Indonesian accent. And then Thai to Lao, and different dialects like that. And then even European languages. And then we also learn tech. So some people, for the first time, they get to use a terminal and install it and learn how to use Vim and different things to aggregate data. We use VisiData and different tools for basically scraping language data from all over the web, building your own text-to-speak engines and bilingual text, but everything to learn language. And then we have all of this stuff on the side to actually teach you the different languages. But you shouldn't have people teach you languages. You should be grabbing the language from an environment that you build around you. And that's what MindKraft is. It's giving you the skills and teaching you how to use the brain. If you haven't tuned into Dr. Andrew Huberman, I highly recommend his podcast. But it's all about using the brain and neuroscience in trying to optimize the way that we learn, and brain states, alpha, theta, beta, using sleep, diet, everything to put our brains in the optimal learning states. And so I take those, the best knowledge that we have about how the brain works, couple it in with all of stuff, and we've got MindKraft.
Man, there's so much more to it than just cracking open a book and learning Salah A, Salah A.
Well, you know what? The awesome thing is I've got one guy, he's a military attaché from a certain government. He came in just learning Thai. After week 3, he could read Khmer, Burmese, Lana script, and a whole bunch of Chinese. And we have native Chinese speakers in there. You listen to this guy speak Mandarin. He's never learned Chinese before, and his accent is almost flawless.
Wow.
After a few weeks, because he's learned how to use his mouth as an instrument. And he can hear what people are doing. So the whole thing is teaching us to hear agnostic of our mother tongue's filters.
Superb way of looking at things. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where can people learn more about you and find out more about MindKraft and watch your videos?
Well, just jump into mindkraft.me. That's craft with a K. That's probably the best way. And all of the actual online modules are done via my learning academy, jcademy.com. And then you'll see any of my clips have a QR code, and that will jump you into the Discord server, and you'll see the conversations going on in there. Anyone can jump in and see them, and the conversations are mind-blowing. They're so cool. And basically it's open to anyone, just as long as you're not a troll.
That's right. Keep those out. You got a good thing going.
No, it's just the worst thing when you're get jaded people or whatever for the enthusiasm for people who really want to learn stuff.
Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks for opening my eyes and my brain a little bit wider, as you do every time, and keep up the good work with helping dummies like me become not dummies like you, approaching learning from a really interesting, unique place. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to the next time you're on the show.
Thank you. Look forward to
Say hi to the family. Take care.
Take care. You too.
Yes, sir.
Dude, this is literally the perfect interview for me because, as you know, after 21 years, I just day to day, well, I don't want to exaggerate. Day to day, I would say 80 to 90% of my interactions with Thai people are fine. But then, I don't know, 10 or 20% of my interactions are deeply confusing. And even though I feel like I'm saying something basic in Thai, they fail to understand me.
Yeah, right.
And it's so frustrating. And that's why this is the perfect interview for me. I mean, I still believe that the skill of the listener is still a factor.
Right.
So even though, of course, like you and I don't know if there's any two guys in Thailand who are more humble about their Thai language speaking abilities. You and I are
/ embarrassed.
Yeah, we're ashamed. But at the same time, I feel like half of Thai people understand almost everything I say, and then another half understand almost nothing I say. So I'm doing the same thing.
It's a very good point, though, because as English speakers, almost everyone in the world speaks a form of English or attempts to speak some English or dialect of English. So our brains are used to deciphering English with an Indian accent, an Uruguayan accent, an Icelandic accent, an Australian accent,
That's
whatever.
right.
But, Thais just don't have that experience, which I think is a really fascinating thing. So once again, if you find yourself in a position of like, why don't they understand what I'm saying? The problem is likely with you, as I find
true.
all the time. Like when I say like, oh, why doesn't this work like this? Or why can't they understand I want to do this? Eventually I figure out, oh, I'm the idiot in this situation again.
Right. Yeah, but it's not, I still think, everything you're saying is right. You should assume that it's your fault, but it's actually factually true that it's not always your fault. Like, it's just the way it is. Like, some Thais are just, some Thais, when they hear a Thai voice coming out of a white face, their brain is short-circuited. It's like they can't process what's going on. So you could be speaking very good Thai, actually very good, and it's like they can't process like good Thai coming out of a white face. So again, this interview you just did is really aimed at me because I do think most of the time, 80 or 90% of the time, it's our fault. Like we're making some horrible tone mistake that is deeply, deeply confusing to a Thai person.
Or offensive.
Yeah, right. But I will defend the 10%. 10% of the time, 10% of the time, the person is like a bad listener. So, you can't beat yourself up too much when it comes to Thai language. That's my view.
But knowledge is power, and a rising tide lifts all boats, et cetera, et cetera. So we're all struggling to find this common ground where we can all understand each other pretty well. So,
well, I got to say, Stu, all kudos to Stu Jay. I mean, talk about a consummate professional. I mean, it's not, he's doing this in many languages. He's jumping back and forth, and I've watched a bunch of his videos and obviously listened to his interviews. And he's very good at jumping back and forth between just day-to-day stuff like, oh, here's how you pronounce Pattaya, and then the next thing he's doing is explaining to you the position of the back of your throat when you're speaking Hindi.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, so he's very good at bridging like the academic linguistic level. Here's the relationship between this language and that language. It's because there was a Mongol invasion in 1320. It's like, he's got this deep understanding of where languages come from, but then he can actually speak it, so he's not, I think there are a lot of linguists who study language and they've got great knowledge, but that doesn't mean they can bust out 10 or 12 languages like on the spot, whereas Stu can. Yeah.
I'll never forget the time he told me the story, the journey of the word like kirka in the Nordic countries how it eventually developed into the word church. It was fascinating,
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah, but many thanks to Stu for coming on the show. Dude loves his languages, and he walks the walk and talks the talk. So anyone, if you're interested in cracking Thai fundamentals, coincidentally enough, Stu's course is called Cracking Thai Fundamentals.
There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stu. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. And last time I asked Ed what he thought about Patongko, so this week it's Ed's turn to ask me about something or other.
All right, dude, I'm going to go old school basic shit, which we've talked about, but I don't remember it being a love, loathe, or live with, but it might have been in the early days. It's just basic old school shit. That's my new theory.
All right.
I'm not trying to hit home runs. I'm trying to hit singles here.
So we're going to change your nickname from Ed the Truth to Ed Old School?
Could be. All right, Craig, I'm going to paint a picture for you. All right? You with me?
I'm with you.
Okay. You're outside of Bangkok, up country somewhere.
Yeah.
Presumably with your family, because I don't know why you'd be driving around by yourself up country. So let's just presume your family's with you.
I'm down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Driving down the road, hours, course, you got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Go off to the side. Could be a gas station, could be a restaurant. You hit the bathroom, turn the corner, squat toilet.
Classic. That is old school.
What's your no? Here's the question. What's your immediate reaction? Is it, oh no, or is it, oh cool? Like what's your immediate? You see the squat toilet. We've been there before. What's your reaction?
Well, let me answer your question by saying another statement. When I go up into that situation and I see a sit-down toilet, I want to drop to my knees and be like, oh, this is going to be fine. Everything's cool.
You turn the corner, you see a regular modern toilet, you're like, yes.
Yes. No, squat toilets, without getting into too much detail, I have not mastered them yet. I can use them if push comes to shove. Hopefully not too much because I don't want to fall over. But I don't enjoy the experience. In fact, when I was doing stand-up in my early days in Bangkok, I performed stand-up a couple of times here.
Yes, I remember this routine. Yes,
I had a whole bit about a disastrous squat toilet experience, which I won't get into here.
So,
but no, not a fan. I will.
Would you say loathe? You're just like, dude, you got to go. Not every loathe is like a hateful loathe. I think you got to fess up and admit it's a loathe. You just don't like it.
Yeah, you're right. It's a loathe. I don't like, I'm not out to get revenge on squat toilets or anything, but I do not like using them. I will if I have to, but I'm going to say a loathe with no harsh feelings.
No hatred in your heart.
That's right.
Well, okay. Again, I don't want to get too much detail, but I'm going to go live with, I find the squat toilet when it works, like when you're set up and in position, it just feels right. Again, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it feels right. But the problem is, I don't know how to get my clothes out of the way. Like I find it an awkward experience. It's like I don't know where to, I don't know. I don't know how to get my clothes out of the way. That's all I'm going to say. And it's just
you know what? When you're alone in a room, take them off. Go naked. Go commando.
I think that's what I feel like you got to do. I'm coming from a non-squat toilet. So all I'll say is this: if I don't have to worry about clothes, I love the squat toilet. I'll go love if I don't have to worry about my own clothes.
Well, also, I'm a bit more rotund than you, and rotund people have a bit more of a problem getting in that position. So I definitely drop to my knees and thank the gods when I see a sit-down toilet.
That's funny.
But you're right. That was classic old school.
Classic question. All right, I'm going to go live with Greg's a kind of a mild loathe, but I think he should be in the loathe category. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, we do. And you can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail online that we can feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter if that's your thing, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you back here next week.
No doubt. Talk about a goddamn professional, or that's a little bit harsh.
God damn.
Sorry about a constant. Wait.